Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast for July 7th, 2022. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Hi, Mark. It's Peter Ryan here back in Montreal, Quebec. So happy to be with you today and really have had just the best time traveling over the course of the past couple of weeks, but great to be back on terra firma and very excited, Mark, also to give a bit of a shameless plug for a new report that Ryan Strategic Advisory has released on the European nearshore that was written by our Director of Syndicated Research, Sean Goforth, and is now available in our research section on the Ryan Strategic Advisory website, ryanadvisory.com.
Well, I've seen some of Sean's research in the past, so I'm sure this is going to be a great one as well. And clearly, your travels over the last 2 weeks must have been connected to this.
Well, there was some connection to it, absolutely. Definitely being on the ground in Central Europe to pick up what some of the key trends have been. Certainly very, very important. Some amazing things happening in countries such as Serbia, such as Poland, such as Slovakia, Hungary, to the same extent. One of the things I'm excited about with this report is not just the stupendous analysis that Sean has put in, but it's also the fact that we took a decision that we wanted to highlight some of the exceptional players, some of the local players in Central Europe, as well as North Africa. And we're including photos of these different organizations within the report. So we have got pictures of contact center operators in Egypt. We've got pictures from Slovakia. We have got photographs from Turkey, from Serbia, and we've even got one from Malta, Mark.
Well, I do remember seeing a very famous photographer in Malta once, and we went around some BPO centers together, and that was a great experience.
Absolutely. It's no question about it. And this report, I think, will certainly turn some heads and hopefully make people ask a few questions about the redynamic or the redefinition of what it means in the European nearshore. But we've got a really exciting podcast today, and one that's a little bit different from what we might usually be talking about. So to give our listeners some context, Mark, a couple of weeks ago, I wrote a blog about the use of celebrities or the ability to leverage celebrities for outsourcers in order to gain more of a market presence, both in terms of the local labor force as well as the community on the whole. Now, this stemmed from a visit I did to Jamaica at the opening of the new ITEL Center in Kingston. And I had the opportunity of meeting a lady called Miss Kitty, a radio personality who works directly with ITEL in order to promote the company as an employer of choice, as well as a member of the community that is focused on ensuring not just its presence as a company, as a commercial entity, but also as a social entity, and making sure that people understand the benefits that not just ITEL, but the industry brings to the island. And then I got to looking up the use of celebrities with a few other organizations, and we see that Kate BPO, the industry association in South Africa, has been working with the well-known cricketer JP Duminy, as well as our guest today, the CEO of Global Telesourcing, Bill Colton, and the way he's been able to leverage a relationship with both Ice-T and Ice Cube, some of the most legendary hip hop artists, and as well as fantastic actors that I think we've seen the past 2 or 3 decades. The blog I put out actually went viral and became the second most read blog on my website over the course of 2022. And Bill brings some really interesting stories to the podcast this week, ones that I think will really probably raise some eyebrows, turn some heads, but will point to the fact that the use of individuals that have notoriety, whether local celebrities or ones that are a bit more well-known, definitely add some positive value to an outsourcing operation.
Yeah, it's interesting, this discussion with Bill about celebrities, because I've seen sports celebrities used at events like conferences before, but not so much in this way, not so much as an ambassador to try attracting employees. It's more just to, boost the brand in a bid to try and get people over to your conference stall or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I see that this is a way that we're seeing celebrities being leveraged in a whole different way, but one that certainly works. And obviously, Bill has got a tremendous amount of experience in our sector. He's truly doing some amazing work with Global Telesourcing. It's a company that's expanding into new communities in Mexico in order to best service consumers in the United States. And I'm pretty sure that he's going to bring a whole new angle to the discussion about the use of celebrities, not just being at a conference booth, but actually being able to draw in some of the best possible talent within a community.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's go straight to the interview with Bill Colton, Chief Executive of Global Telesourcing.
The CX Files takes a turn for the red carpet this week in our discussion with Bill Colton, who is the CEO of Global Telesourcing. He joins us from his home in the United States. Bill, great to have you here. Thanks for taking some time.
Thanks for having me, Peter. It's great to be here. First time anybody's ever used me and red carpet in the same sentence, so that's gotta be a good start.
Well, I guarantee it won't be the last, Bill. And I'm really excited about our discussion today because we've got a very celebrity-focused interview for the CX Files. But before we dive into that, I'd love it if you could share a little bit of information about your company, Global Telesourcing. You and I are old friends. We've known each other for years. But for those who might not have come across yourself or the company, let's hear a little bit about you guys.
Yeah, sure. We're a U.S.-based company, but we operate our business in Mexico. Up until last year, we were entirely in a 3-building campus, around 1,100 seats in Monterrey, Mexico. Last year, we launched a second location in León, Mexico, which is a slightly smaller city, kind of in the dead middle of the country, which has been a great market for us. What's a little bit unique about our business and kind of where we position ourselves is that nearly all of the folks who we have facing customers, phone or digital, nearly all of them spent the formative years of their life living and working in the US. So these are folks who didn't learn English in a classroom. They didn't learn it, watching movies. Nearly all of them grew up in the US, and now they're back in Mexico because college is cheaper, because their family moved back, because the circumstances of their life happened back in Mexico. So our clients are typically very large US companies who have at least a portion of their business that either they do in-house or they only do domestically because it requires a level of either language sophistication or kind of cultural understanding that's hard to outsource, but they make an exception for us based on our workforce. So we've grown nicely, and the second location has been fun for us too.
Well, congratulations on the expansion. I've followed Global Telesourcing for a long time, and your pathway to success is just phenomenal. So well done. Now, we're here today to talk a little bit about the use of celebrities in the context of BPO and customer experience delivery. Now, this is an interesting one, Bill, because what gave me the idea was the launch of the recent iTel BPO brand new site in Kingston, Jamaica. And I had the privilege to attend. Yanni Epstein, the company chairman, asked me to come down. And at the launch, something that struck me was the fact that the entire element of the ceremony was being administered by a local radio personality called Miss Kitty. Now, Yanni was explaining to me that they have come to almost like an ambassadorship where Miss Kitty effectively evangelizes iTel and has done just a tremendous job doing so. It's had a net benefit for the company in terms of recruitment and in terms of awareness in the community. And that struck me that it's not the only instance where a BPO has been able to take this approach. As a matter of fact, the reason you and I are talking is because Global Telesourcing has managed to form some celebrity relationships of its own in the form of two of my favorite hip hop artists, and in one case, an actor, Ice-T and Ice Cube. Probably a good point of departure would be to talk to you a little bit about what motivated you to take this approach in terms of engaging celebrities for the purposes of Global Telesourcing.
Sure. I mean, it's a couple of different things that all came together at the same. I mean, the first is that, as I mentioned at the beginning, Monterrey, Mexico is kind of where our hub is in Mexico. And it's a competitive labor market, and we've always prided ourselves on having a great environment. We pay our people more than other places. We think that the work that we're doing is better. We have a good reputation, and all of that goes really far. But still, it's crowded out there. And one of the benefits that we have as a comparatively small company, where we're not publicly traded and we're not dealing with institutional shareholders, is that we can do fun stuff, and we can make those decisions pretty quickly. And so, we have our director who's responsible for kind of the top of the funnel of recruitment, a guy named Gustavo, who was literally our first employee in 2008, is a super creative guy, and came to us with the pitch, and we said, sure, why not? And it's been blessed. So, in the early days when we would do something on social media, or we would do something in terms of advertising, it was sort of weirdly flattering that the huge multinational companies were almost instantly ripping us off. It felt like we were doing something right if everybody was following us. That novelty really wore off, particularly as we grew a little bit and other folks continued to just kind of steal our stuff. So we wanted to do something that was harder for somebody else to pull off and that would be effective.
And it's interesting, the effectiveness of using celebrities. And before you and I were starting to record to this podcast, I'd mentioned to you that I wrote a blog about the use of celebrities in the context of CX and BPO. And to date, it's the second most read blog of the year on my site, which I was really surprised at. But as you say, there's definitely interest out there. And as we think a little bit about your engagement with the two celebrity spokespeople that you've been working with, Ice-T and Ice Cube, what led you and the team to decide those were the people that you wanted to engage with? Obviously, there's a plethora of individuals who've got notoriety and are well known in the community. Why Ice-T and Ice Cube?
For starters, it was a very, it shouldn't have been shocking, but it was a very humbling experience in that, there was extensive discussion about celebrities that were available, ones that meant a lot to me, and almost across the board, it was a reality check that I am 25 years older than anyone who matters in our business. And that all of these folks, I look at your Friday polls that always bring a smile to my face. I think we're probably roughly the same age, grew up roughly the same time, at least from a pop culture perspective. And it was incredibly apparent to me that all of these folks that would be hilarious or fun or kind of interesting to me were absolutely meaningless to most of the folks that we have down there. So the goal was to identify folks, and obviously, Ice-T and Ice Cube are not young folks, but they absolutely resonated with the crowd and the demographic that we were looking for. Again, folks that grew up in the U.S. but they're living in Mexico, and it worked really well. And spoiler alert is that there are some more coming that will be fun over the next couple of months.
Well, thanks for that reality check on age, Bill. I think you're right. We probably are roughly the same age. And it always amazes me with the Friday polls that I do about the 1980s when I speak to younger people and ask them why they are participating. And they just say, I have no idea who any of the people are in these polls that you're doing, which I find frightening and disheartening. But at the same time, I get it. Hey, but I always say it's better to celebrate another year getting older than not to have that option. So
the opposite is not an attractive option. Yeah.
No, precisely. So that leads me to another question, and I think you've half answered it. But prior to deciding that you're going to go further with new celebrities and bringing in new people of notoriety, were there any other personalities that were decided upon or considered in the context of Ice-T and Ice Cube, or was it really those two that seemed to really be settled on?
No. This was a long process and a fun one, by the way. Where honestly, it was. I'm joking about it, but it was weeks of back and forth, of pros and cons, of risks, of benefit. But everything that we do, both inside our BPO and kind of outside, is highly quantifiable and highly measurable. It's just it's our MO. And so we're looking. This is fun, right? And don't get me wrong, like this is absolutely a blast. But we are measuring things. We are measuring, and it's highly quantifiable. So we're able to measure return on investment. We're able to measure, the number of applications, for example, that specifically come in from it. We're able to measure how viral it goes and what impact that has on attracting and retaining employees. We get feedback from our current folks and from prospective folks. But yeah, it was this was a thought out process. It's expensive enough that it's not just a throwaway item. So you want to make sure that it's working for you.
And that leads me to my next question. What were the net benefits that Global Telesourcing was able to realize by working with these two gentlemen?
Yeah, I mean, highly quantifiable. I mean, we saw an increase between 200% and 300% of applications for a fairly long period of time. It does start to trail off a little bit. And so you have to be careful if you're doing multiple ones. You don't want to cannibalize the impact of your initial celebrity by rolling out another one. It's just not effective, or at least it's not smart from an ROI perspective. But it was quantifiable, and we've come to the conclusion that if we do this constantly, it loses some of its impact. But doing it occasionally and doing it with the right people seems to be something that we'll probably employ on a fairly long-term basis.
Yeah, and it's interesting because apart from yourselves and ITEL, I was in touch with friends of mine in Cape BPO, which is the industry association in Western Cape Province in South Africa. And they were really excited when I published the blog. They were telling me a little bit about the work they've done with a celebrity cricketer called JP Duminy, who I'll openly admit I'm not a cricket fan, but apparently within cricket circles, he's legendary. And that's been really important for them in terms of not just generating awareness amongst prospective employees, but also across the community to talk a little bit about the benefits of BPO and what it does bring an entire city or region or country. So, Bill, to finish off here, can you tell me, using this approach, using the celebrity brand ambassador approach, is this something that you would counsel other outsourcers, whether in the US or otherwise, to examine as a means of looking to try and optimize elements such as recruitment and awareness?
No, it's a terrible idea. Nobody should ever do it. It's just a complete. No, I'm just kidding. I just don't want to give any advice to competitors. No, I mean, honestly, I think that that jokes aside, I mean, obviously we have found it to be effective, but it's got to be pretty strategic and it's got to be kind of consistent with who you are otherwise. I think that if like a super stodgy kind of buttoned up BPO suddenly pulled in iced tea, for example, I think it's a non sequitur, and I think it's kind of not consistent with the rest of the imaging and branding. If, like in our circumstance, we're viewed as kind of, and we try to be sort of a fun kind of, a little bit quirky employer, then it worked perfectly well with our brand and really enhanced what we were trying to achieve. So I think it's just got to be, you've got to look at yourself in the mirror and determine whether it's consistent with the rest of what you're doing. And if so, go for it. And if not, then probably not.
And that sort of preempted my next question, my second last question, and that was the starting point. And I think talking about the brand and the values and making sure that you're able to find somebody that aligns with that makes total sense. Logistically speaking, how would a BPO executive go about finding and contacting a celebrity to get them involved?
There are agencies that, without giving too terribly much away, without going too deep into it, there are platforms and agencies that make it relatively easy to do. So I think that one of the things that technology has done is made these kinds of things a heck of a lot easier probably than it would have been a decade ago. But it's not a particularly Herculean task.
Got it. Okay. Well, look, Bill Colton from Global Telesourcing, thank you very, very much for your time today. We'll see you on the next red carpet.
I appreciate it, Peter. Thanks very much. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.